Hello, friends, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Beyond the Verse, Star Citizen podcast with your host, Sulyce. And we are blessed to have my dear friend, our guest speaker, Coniff, on air with us. Coniff, how are you doing today, sir?
Well, I am well. However, I don't know if I'm a blessing or a curse, considering you are diving into this verse, if you will, that is decades in the making, but certainly plenty of adventure yet to come, I should say. So,
absolutely.
A blessing, a curse. I suppose you and me and all of us that have taken our first steps into soul or whatever they call the verse. I don't remember. we'll find out, right? So.
We'll get there. Well, it is your fault. It's your fault that that I am in this game. And let me just, joking aside, thank you for this. The Star Citizen experience for me personally has been one of the best gaming experiences I've had up to this point. We'll get into that here in the next couple of minutes for this show in this inaugural episode. But thank you for this. Now, you have no responsibility on the money that I've spent in this game. So I want to go ahead and relieve you of that burden.
Thank you.
That is something you don't need to worry about.
I appreciate it.
But man, you showed me the ropes, and I don't know, the bank account might say curse, but the gaming experience might say blessing. So I appreciate it, Coniff.
I would say that any person that has, and it's not even buying into the marketing material, correct? Like it's good. And the people who have, maybe partnered with Cloud Imperium Games on YouTube or wherever, they're providing a context of their experience that is exciting to watch. And that's how all media is. But as someone who you just go and see what they have, you go to that what's it called with the star chart, the universe thing they have where you can go and click on all the stars and see the history and the lore of all the worlds. We can't really fault anyone for looking at this product or this game, probably better said experience, and having our kid-like imaginations run wild. So
yeah, that's right. That's right.
And ultimately, I think that's where it all starts, both for you and myself. So
yeah, I think this is it's filled a void of a game experience that we just haven't seen before. And I don't want this podcast to be fanboy. I don't want it to be optimism and positivity all the time. There is some realism to where we're at with an alpha state 10 years later. Like there's a realism there, but it's filling a void that we all wished existed in gaming. And if we're just patient enough, this game is delivering. It's bringing that to the market. So we'll get into that here in the next couple of minutes. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get this started. So for those of you watching on YouTube, thanks for joining. You feel free to join us on Thursday nights, 8 p.m. Central on the YouTube channel. That's /@ Star Citizen BTV, Bravo Tango Victor. But let's get started. You are listening to Beyond the Verse, a Star Citizen podcast. A show dedicated to Cloud Imperium Games, Star Citizen, and Squadron 42. Whether you fight, explore, unite, and or trade, we bring you news, updates, interviews, reviews, and analysis. So sit back, relax, grab yourself a pour of Radegast, and join us as we go Beyond the Verse.
Launch sequence activated.
All right, and again, welcome to Beyond the Verse, Star Citizen podcast with your host, Sulyce, and joined us today is Coniff. The podcast is going to have everything we had before the introduction up to this point, but this is what we can expect from this podcast moving forward. So I wanted to address what you can expect, the agenda, the vision that we have for Beyond the Verse. every Monday, there is a This Week in Star Citizen, where on Monday we get kind of what to expect for the week. Tuesday, we get a lore drop for the most part. Wednesday, we get a roadmap, kind of tech and development update. And then on Thursday, we get Inside Star Citizen, which is their live YouTube experience. And so this is a perfect time for me to host a podcast like this, because it's going to take the entire week, analysis, deep dive, color of what is being presented, and it's going to be put in podcast form or YouTube live stream and delivered to you, whether you're working out, driving, running, whatever your podcast need is. So without further ado, I would like to go ahead and get started with introductions. Like I said, I'm joined today by Coniff, a dear friend of mine. We joked about being, whether it's a blessing or a curse. My financials probably say curse. My gaming experience probably says blessing. But I want to take a couple of seconds to kind of walk the viewers and listeners to where we're at today. So about 5 years ago, from a Sulyce gaming perspective, I decided to take a Joe Rogan model of a long form conversation and bring content creators to the podcasting realm, to ask them questions, to dive into their communities, to have that just conversation around a table, to see what makes them tick, what brings their community together, and just garner these amazing ideas that they're coming up with. I did a couple episodes there, dabbled in that, and then Elder Scrolls Online brought me to the doorstep of the lore seekers. Everything that kind of I am today as far as a content creator goes has ridden on this friendship that I've grown with the lore seekers. So I cannot move forward without saying a thank you to a Cash and thank you to a Jibs, who has kind of paved the way and taught me a lot of what I'm currently doing. In Elder Scrolls Online, I started leading the raid groups, the kind of competition, elite version of Elder Scrolls Online raid groups. And that's where I was able to meet them on a personal level. And through our friendships that were created and molded, we started up what's called the Natural Ones D&D. And it's one of my favorite seasons of my content creation days. We took Dungeons and Dragons. We took the Lost Mines of Fendelver, which is at the time was their startup, and we used like the six of us at the time. There was six of us, and created this really cool RP. Like, we didn't really care about the 5th edition rules, but we had this really awesome story that we produced. And again, the Natural Ones D&D. In a personal element, I work at Amazon as my personal life, and through that experience, after a decade of working at Amazon, I've grown these relationships with these developers and publishers, and in doing that, we kind of moved the Lore Seekers' efforts to a new world, the game New World. We went that direction with our content creation. So in keeping the spirit of the Natural Ones D&D, I led this role-playing effort, if you will, where we had this weekly news and updates, typical podcasting show that we did as Lore Seekers. Our climax, or I guess like the highest we got, or the best that we did, is we actually got the senior narrative design lead, Robert Chesney, shout out, great human, great individual. We got him onto a podcast and interviewed him and had a phenomenal conversation about what it takes to write a narrative for a game. Again, a phenomenal experience. But then life happened. We had kids graduating. We had changes in career fields. I went from retail ops to fulfillment center ops. We had so many changes where we kind of dispersed. And that is where me and Coniff kind of pick up our Story. Me and Coniff have always kind of been like associates. We kind of knew each other. We worked together in the content creation space, but we didn't really become interactive friends until this moment. And what's funny, Coniff, I'm going to kind of throw you into this live, but what's kind of funny about this is we were in this community, this Discord community that just jaw-jacking. There's not really a rhyme or reason to what we were doing. But he sent a screenshot. Coniff, I don't know if you remember this, but you sent a screenshot. And I remember seeing it thinking, man, it looks like Cyberpunk. What is he doing playing Cyberpunk? That's kind of odd. It's kind of off. And I realized he was an Art Corp in Star Citizen, and I started asking questions. I started asking him, hey, what is this game? It looks pretty cool. Tell me more about it. And the jerk sent me these YouTube videos on what this game is, what it's going to be, and the rest is history. I mean, money aside, and the last year aside, the rest is history. For the past year, I've been content creating with our organization called Soul Provision. I've been content creating with pictures and getting really involved in the community. Attended some bar citizens, met Galactica and Jake Acapella. So shout out to those two individuals on the community team for CIG. But it's all because of this gentleman named Coniff. Again, my really good friend. And I think now is a really good time to throw you in there for your introduction. Coniff, number one, thank you so much. Star Citizen has been probably one of the best gaming experiences of my career, and it's because of you. But I'll give you the mic. It's all you, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how we got here, why did you get me involved? Let's go from there.
So I will start by saying that when I sent that photo, yes, Area 18, it was either that or Hurston, which from the ground both kind of look similar. Both look cyberpunky.
That's fair.
But after that, you sent me a message and you said, what's your elevator pitch for Star Citizen? And I proceeded to give you the longest elevator ride of your life.
Yes.
And gave you several videos across, all sorts of content creators that were putting out sort of like here's what you need to know about Star Citizen videos.
Yeah.
And from that point, it's very much an informative look at this is what the game was like back then and where it was at. But to that point, things just kind of snowballed into where we are now.
Yes.
Myself, I have been what I would call a content creator drifter for years now. I have a lot of hobbies. All of them are game related, whether board games, card games, or video games. For the longest time, I was enamored, and I would say I still am, but my entire focus was board gaming. And there's, board gaming is not Monopoly. It's not just Candyland. It's not just Catan, because that's pretty popular these days.
Yeah.
There's a website called Board Game Geek that is the encyclopedia Bible of all things board games, any game you can possibly think of. And so through that, I was playing tons of games that I had never heard of. Stuff from being wizards in a maze, destroying each other, throwing not snowballs, fireballs at people.
Yeah.
To a game about anthropomorphic. Never say that word right. So I'm not even going to go back and try to correct it.
Nice.
But like little animal critters in a forest, building a city and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
So I am enamored with the idea of the immersion or the experience or the lived in, possibility of a world.
Yeah.
And so with board games, obviously that doesn't come across as well in most cases.
Yeah.
Some might argue, if you consider D&D to be board game adjacent, that can be one of the most immersive experiences, and I agree.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think it goes without saying that video games do it the best because they quite literally put you in this world, to all of your senses, with maybe the exception of smell and physical touch.
Yeah.
And so I've been content creating, drifting across the universe for years now. Just wrapped up a podcast that I did with some friends of mine for 3 years about video games.
Yeah.
But all of this, this joy of experiencing worlds is what ultimately led me to Star Citizen.
Yeah.
Now, we have another friend that is more ancient than I am that we have to give credit to.
Acknowledge.
And that, and that is Shoe Swapper,
yes.
who was also there in the ESO Lore Seeker days. But more importantly, he's always been one for me that is telling me about all these games, these experiences that he's had, these worlds, whether MMOs, whether single-player experiences, whether whatever Star Citizen could be considered, those type of games. And so he told me, and one day I was at work, working from home during the pandemic, and he was like, "Hey, you should come watch this stream." And he was streaming himself mining on Microtech, right?
Okay.
Just out in the frozen tundra. And everybody who's listening to this that has played the game knows that it is when you get in your ship, you fly, and that's a whole experience in and of itself. And we can dive into as much of it as we need to.
That's right.
But when you land on the planet, you get out of your ship for the first time on the planet of Microtech, on the the wintry side of it, I should say.
Yeah.
You just literally feel like you're standing in the middle of Norway or Iceland, in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
And it's just this unreal experience of immersion in this foreign world. And, I think when you're new, you don't really realize the context of it all, that someone could literally come up to you and blast you at their will.
Yes.
In any number of things can happen. The world is your oyster, so to speak. So this idea of this freedom really caught my eye, and I always wanted to try it. Never had a PC that could run it. Eventually built a PC in 2021, which of course opened up my opportunity for all these other worlds that I've only ever heard of.
Yeah.
And from there, tried Star Citizen, and it's that brings us to now, I suppose. but yeah, ultimately the takeaway is that I do a ton of stuff, voiceover. I'm doing YouTube videos now on just random topics, whatever I see fit, because ultimately I've always believed that I'm just going to create whatever I find interesting. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll flex for you. Coniff is as close, if not an actual professional voiceover actor and musician that you can get. For the Lore Seekers, he has been providing music covers and his sultry voice that we're all probably swooning over at this point. He's providing all of that at this professional level. So kind of, for what it's worth, the product that you produce is freaking amazing. And if anybody doubts me, go check out the Lore Seekers on YouTube and Twitter. Go look at their historical videos. And if you hear music, the archives back in the day, right? If you hear something that is musical or a voiceover, it's 99.9% Coniff. So, man, you're amazing at what you do. I hope to one point be at that level. But yeah, so there, man, there's more to this onboarding though of me into this game, and so I'll just tell a quick story. Coniff, being the jerk that he is, got me involved into Star Citizen right during Invictus, right? So like anybody who's played this game for longer than, I don't know, 6 months knows that IAE and Invictus are two of the most like worst times you could get involved in this game. So here's the deal. I've been between games. I've been yearning for this immersive game to get lost in. Like that was my bar. I want to get lost into a game. I don't really care about the IP. I just want to get like immersed. That was my shtick, right? So he introduces me to this game. I get in it. I'm weary. Hey, it's an alpha that's been in at the time, like an alpha for 9 years. So I was a little bit hesitant, but I did my research for like 10 minutes.
That's all it takes, really.
That's all it takes is like 10 minutes of like, well, damn it. Okay. So I'm invested, clearly. But I got into the game right during Invictus. And so if you don't know anything about Star Citizen, you don't know about Invictus, this is literally, this is something that is not experienced, at least in my 30 plus years of gaming. This is something that is not experienced in any other game. It is a expo. It's an expo where Star Citizen brings all 166 ships, which we'll get into that math in a little bit, but they bring all 166 ships in waves into their city called Orison on the planet Crusader. And literally, you watch them fly into this expo center, you walk your happy ass into the expo center, and you can tour every single one of the ships. So me not knowing a damn thing about this game, that's my first experience. Holy crud. The realism, the simulation, the walking and seeing this massive vehicle in front of me that I can walk into and explore. There's no other game that can do this, right? Like people have mentioned other space games, and I'm not going to get into the names. It's inappropriate, but there's other space games that kind of like touch on this subject, but they don't have the same kind of immersion of getting onto a ship, getting into the the cockpit, getting into the seat.
That's a Freudian slip right there.
That is.
Perfect live.
Love it. We're doing this live, guys. But yes, but it's flight simulator, but in the space world. So all the boxes that I needed checked was done in this massive event that, of course, had all the bells and whistles. It had a website, it had events, it had the calendar. I didn't know better. It could definitely have been Bravo, like in beta mode, or it could have been in live prod. It doesn't feel like an alpha in this moment, right? So I was invested. I went from like a $40, this is where we're getting into dollars, I apologize, but I went to like a $40 starter pack to like, yeah, I'll do the Cuddy Black package. I'll spend $120 and get the next level. And then the rest is history. For what it's worth, anybody listening, Wing Commander, like that title, I've earned that in money spent. So just do your research and figure out how much money I've spent. But the rest is history, right? It was just an amazing, immersive experience that got me into a cockpit, that got me flying around Crusader. I wasn't doing missions. I wasn't doing, these bounty hunting, extravaganzas. Like I was literally just flying around, picking up trash and throwing it into the trash can because I could. So I think there's a realism of like when you start during Invictus or IAE, be careful because every ship is on sale on the website and you could be a wing commander in 10 months, which is my story.
Yeah, there's a part of your story that you left out that I think every listener needs to know.
Oh boy.
And it is now of course you've evolved and you have certainly gotten better. But the first time I ever flew with you as the pilot, I don't know the planet, but what knows the planet is my bones and my, body that has been broken against it because this man crashed a Carrack into a planet, and we're sitting there, and I'm, in one of the turrets walking around. Of course, taking in the sights because the thing is magnificent. Again, this is during IAE or whatever it's Invictus, the abbreviation is. I'm not as good with that stuff as Sulyce is. I got him into it, and so I do whatever. But this man crashes this ship into the planet. Of course, it's like stopping a train in the middle of, zero gravity and all of a sudden gravity. But it was a very, I know you beat yourself up about it, but it was an amazing experience that, in and of itself. And that's just, again, one of the many stories that this game can bring about, I think. But,
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. So no, I remember that like it was yesterday. Unfortunately, I had went from like the starter package, and now that you say it, I remember the details very clearly. Unfortunately, I went from like a Titan like starter pack, like smallest ship you can possibly, have. Easy to maneuver. Like I got cocky, I got arrogant, and so I upgraded to like the package that has the Carrack in it. And I remember us getting into the Carrack. We're all like super confident. It's like I think Champ was with us. I think, maybe one or two others were with us. And yeah, I didn't even take into account the fact that this is like, I don't know, a million times bigger than the Titan. And I just lawn darted us, like straight up lawn darted us into, and I think it was like Hurston. Like I'm pretty sure it was Hurston because it was like a desert, of our death.
It could have been Aberdeen. It was something that was red. And
it was painful. It was painful. Yeah, I killed us. It was dramatic. It was a dramatic death, and I'll own that. But yes, to Coniff's point, these are these stories. So I think this is like a really good segue into like who this game is for, and maybe who this game is not for. So if you're into like the simulation, like I said, like flight sim, you have to take off, you have to turn on your shields, turn on your power, you have to ask permission to leave a hangar, right? Like there's all these things you have to, it's a simulation. At the end of the day, simulation. So if that interests you, that excites you, yeah, this game is probably for you. Kind of laid back, chilled, you're going to exist in outer space. Right? So all you Star Wars fans, Star Trek fans, those who have wanted to live in that world, hey, this is it. And you're going to enjoy the hell out of it. It's going to be amazing. However, and this is where I would love your input, Coniff. However, if you are meta, if you are min-max, I'm going to create YouTube videos on the rotation, and I'm going to have the highest DPS. It's probably not for you. It's probably not at this current moment. Yes, you can upgrade your cannons, you can upgrade your quantum drive, your shields. You can do all the things. But at the end of the day, it's more about the skill of actually maneuvering your ship than it is about some 10-second rotation that Lyco is doing for Elder Scrolls Online. Love the dude, by the way, but just that's not what you're going to experience in Star Citizen. Coniff, what are your thoughts, man?
Well, there's always numbers, and numbers never lie. And at the end of the day, like in a game where there's PvP, which Star Citizen has, there's always going to be what is the best possible numbers loadout on my whatever the ship is, right? Whatever ship you're running. What is the best cannons I can put on, the best guns, everything. And ultimately, like, I think that's a part of gaming that is just, it's never going to go away. It doesn't matter how, except for Microsoft Flight Simulator, there's no PvP. But talking about simulation games. But, when you look at it from the perspective of it is PvP, but it's more about just taking each step and each moment as it comes, and every bounty, every security depot raid, every time you get sent to Klesher because you accidentally ran into somebody in the middle of Bajani Point or whatever. It's every moment like that actually gives this game its flavor. And so from a content creation perspective, I'm more interested in when cool things happen. And that could be PvP. That could be an insane dogfight. But it's just not the game where I, personally, would ever be interested in needing to know the top DPS. Now,
absolutely,
there's websites already that you can kit out your ship if you would like. And, you can find exactly where to buy those guns and all this stuff. But again, the real, if we look at this, like a diamond in the rough, which it certainly is, the real diamond part is the stories and the adventure that is waiting for you. And ultimately, that's what drew me to the game. That's why I backed at whatever level I did that got me the Cuddy Black.
Yeah.
And that's why that, it's a game that you can get those experiences in its current state.
Right.
Now, just to touch on that briefly, what I always tell people is that the game is playable. A lot of people hear Star Citizen and they're like, isn't that game that kick-started in 1872 and it's still in alpha? Yes. Not that far back, but it is a game that you can play now. Yes. And so for $40, you get access to it's like the MSI something. It's like the little thing that you might be able to get some cargo on.
Yeah.
But it'll get you around the verse, which is what's important.
Like Aurora. I think it's the Aurora something. Yeah.
And so you back, and what I tell people is you back at that level. If you're interested in the game, just know, like, you are playing an alpha game.
Mm-hmm.
And there are moments where you're playing and you forget entirely that it's in alpha and it's unreleased. And then moments later, you're brought right back to reality with a bug or a 30K or whatever.
Yeah.
But what I tell people is, for $40, you can get a ton of fun out of the experience.
Yeah.
Just on that initial thing. And then if you want, you can go up higher. Or you can earn all your money and get your ships in. It doesn't matter how you want to approach it, because some of us have far more time than money. Others have far more money than time. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, however you want to spend that money, whether it's buying ships outright so you can have them, or spending that time to buy it in game, and maybe that's your fulfillment, whatever. All of that can be had for just $40. Yeah. And these experiences that we've talked about, others I'm sure we're going to, those are all because of that initial investment. And, you can get all of that for that initial investment. Yeah,
absolutely. Spending that $40 is some of the best money you could spend in gaming. So I think this is a really good transition to a couple of things, right? So you hit on, like, I don't know, expansion 318. Like, we're going to get into that at some point in this podcast. But there is some reality of, yes, this game is an alpha, but what I want to do is challenge the listener and the viewer to kind of see it from a different perspective. So before we get there, I'm going to kind of walk us to get there. So number one, Coniff mentioned, like, this experience, this for $40, you get to experience this amazing world. I'm telling you right now, through 30 plus years of gaming, The Last of Us, from single player, Elder Scrolls Online raids, World of Warcraft raids, Guild Wars 2, of all the gaming experiences, my favorite has been the one night that was Coniff, myself, Champ, like Aaron was there, Shoe Swapper was there, but we were flying my Carrack. You probably remember this. We were flying the Carrack and doing bounties. We were murdering everybody. Like, we were blowing everybody up. But I made the bad decision of getting to a cave and not destroying the ship that was next to us, right? I was like, let's leave them be. They're not showing any aggression. But seconds later, we're all exiting the ship. Champ, bless his heart, stays on the Carrack, and next thing you know, we're all dead. We're all completely dead, not knowing what the hell happened. Come to find out, this one little, and it was like a Titan. It was a Aurora or some small ship. Yeah. Just wasted us. But that evening, to this day, has been my favorite moment in my gaming history, because it was camaraderie, it was friendship, it was, hey, calling out, a distance and direction. It was tactical, it was strategic, it was all the things, role playing, right? We had people in cockpits and turrets. So for $40, you're going to get your money's worth. But enter 318. So I actually heard you come off mute. Did you have anything?
Yeah, I was going to add to that, and I don't want the listener to assume that we're both just like you said at the beginning, just fanboys.
Right.
There's an element of this game that is unlike any other. And
yes.
What you described with the Carrack and all that, what I actually remember happening is that he had been firing on us this whole time, like as we were flying in, but it was like bugged out and we couldn't see.
Oh,
and we're like,
yeah.
Because that's the only thing that would make sense, because the Carrack has,
shields,
massive shields.
Yeah.
But my point with all this is that the cooperation and coordination that goes into flying a Carrack, you have a pilot.
Yeah.
You have an aft gunner, a starboard gunner. I believe I had my Origin M50 in the hangar of the Carrack. And I went and, got into that to go be as an escort, which an M50, if people who actually know their Star Citizen ships,
that's a racing ship.
An M50 is a racing ship.
Yeah.
But it does have 2 guns. But anyway, my whole point is like the cooperation and coordination to fly and captain and just maneuver this fighting force for bounties or for this experience that we had with this rogue player. That is the only other game that I have felt that in personally is Hell Let Loose, which is a military World War II big team battle shooter where there's a squad lead. People have different roles and everything, but like ultimately, and I don't know if it's just after years and years of gaming that I'm looking for that type of thing, but it's that multiplayer social cooperation coordination experience and bundled together with the most immersive space sim that I think personally exists. So that was my coming off mute rant, I guess.
No, I mean, I absolutely love it. And we can go into like what it means to co-pilot a Carrack or these massive ships, but the amount of cooperation, the strategy, the communication required to actually play this game at scale is something I personally, I haven't played that game that you mentioned, but I have never experienced up to this point, right? So flying the Carrack in that moment, in that story, regardless of the bad decision I made of not defending us, that to me sold me the strategy and the vision of this game and what it could be, which again I think is an amazing transition into 318. So Coniff, I said it at the beginning of the call, you said it just now, we're not fanboys. There's a reality that this game also sucks, and so let's just talk about that. Let's just address the elephant in the room, which is 318. So I'm gonna take my best crack at this. All right, wish me luck.
Okay.
No matter what emotion you have, you are right. You are right feeling whatever you feel about 318. So 318 launches, all hell breaks loose, dumpster fires. Right is left, up is down. It is the craziest experience in gaming I've ever experienced from like a dev and a community standpoint. It's insane. People are losing their ever-loving minds. Twitter, social media is blowing up. People are saying, hey, stop what you're doing. Stop with the lore updates. Hey, if you're delivering coffee, stop delivering coffee. You need to start developing code. It's an extreme reaction, which I'm not saying it's wrong. How you feel is right. So you've got this side of the aisle that's livid. They're mad. They have spent $10,000 in the game, and the game is literally unplayable. And I can, from experience, can tell you that 318, when it first launched, was unplayable, right? Or you can look at it from the other side of this aisle and realize what they're creating. And I know people hate this excuse, but what they're creating has never existed in games before. And I think now, for those of you watching on YouTube, I'm going to screen share and kind of show y'all some documentation, but I wanted to show y'all the technology of what this game is trying to achieve. So without further ado, let's take a crack at it. Screen sharing my screen now, going to the PDF. So this is jump point 11_01 dogged persistence. This was their last jump point, and they talk about the 3 pillars that needs to happen before they achieve this technology, this existence, this idea of a persistent entity, right? This streaming that happens. And so I'm going to try my best to explain it, but at the same time, with the context of this is why shit broke. Okay? All right. So 3 pillars. The first pillar, and you can see on my screen as I'm sharing, the first pillar is object container streaming. They achieved that. Earlier last year, they achieved the object container streaming. This is a database. This is basically assigning literally everything that exists in the game. It's assigning it properties in an idea of persistence, right? So this database exists. That's kind of like low-hanging fruit. I think it's big from a developer standpoint, but from a gamer, you don't see it. It's not like this. It's not this eye-opening experience for a gamer. However, with 3.18, they launched persistent entity streaming, which from the rest of this stream, it's going to be called PES. So they launched PES. It is this idea that I take a Gatorade bottle, right? So if you're walking around your spaceport and you pick up a bottle and you drink it for hydration, it's this idea that you can take that bottle and go literally anywhere in the universe and drop it off. I can sign out of the game. I can tell Coniff, hey Coniff, why don't you go check out this XYZ coordinate and tell me if
I'm not getting your Gatorade, Sulyce. Come on. No,
pick up my trash, Coniff. Pick up my trash. But that's the technology. Is now Coniff should be able to get into the game, go to a planet, go to that XYZ coordinate, and find that Gatorade bottle on the ground. I'm sorry, but no other game is doing this. I could be wrong. Please, somebody email us and tell us that I'm completely wrong. But it doesn't exist in World of Warcraft, Guild Wars, New World. It doesn't exist.
Yeah,
so,
not to this extent, honestly.
Exactly.
Not while someone is still logged in, right? Or not. I mean,
Yes.
logged out. I think that's the key takeaway. Is that like
Yes.
Fallout 76, you can drop stuff, or you have a camp in the world
Yes.
somewhere that I could just stumble across. But
Yes.
the second you log out, it's gone.
Yep.
That is the innovation, I
Yes.
think, with this whole thing.
I agree 100%. 100%. So what's happened, and I read this, if you're listening and you're the one that made this comment in the lore drop on Tuesday, I want to give you credits. I just don't remember your name. I apologize. But somebody mentioned this idea of Jenga, right? You're building this tower and you're removing these pieces of Jenga. But what's happened is that the base of the tower that you're building, you've completely replaced, not with new Jenga pieces, but new shapes and designs and color and texture. Your shit's gonna break. Like, the foundation of your tower is gone. It's still there. You're still attempting to build a tower, but because you're trying to change and you're innovating this whole entire new concept, you're rearranging the base of this tower, and that's what everybody has experienced in 3.18. Everything got lit on fire. Everything. And I'm right there with you. I was mad. I was buying things like Fortuna paints. I got the stupid, like, I say stupid, I actually love it. It's one of my favorite ships. But I got the Phoenix Emerald, but I can't fly it because I can't call it, right? Like the game is totally broken up to this point, up to this day. But it's because I just want to remind everybody, I'm not a fanboy. I want to say it again. I'm not a fanboy, but I want to remind everybody that this game this game has like a minimum viable product. And their minimum viable product is these 3 pillars launching. Are they able to create this world that has persistent entity streaming, which leads into server meshing, which we'll get into in a couple seconds? But until that's accomplished, the game's not going to go live. So yes, the house is on fire. People are mad. People are on Twitter cursing out the lore team because they're writing articles about narrative rather than writing code. But I think if we all just take a moment and kind of remove the emotion away from the intellectual, I think we can probably find a middle ground. Does it suck? Absolutely. It sucks. At the same time, we don't want to rush the production teams to develop just another World of Warcraft in space, another EVE Online. What we're wanting as a community, as people listening to this podcast, what we're truly desiring is a out-of-body experience that's never been emulated in any other game. And I think that involves like next level patience. I'm one of them. I have to remind myself to like have that patience. I don't know, Coniff, is there anything that I said that like sparked anything? But I just think
always.
we need to breathe.
I find sparks in many places, and one of them is how you feel is always right. And there's a second half of that I'd like to add that I think a lot of people need to hear, because while how they feel may always be right, it's not always constructive towards others to share those feelings or act upon them, if you will. And that's what you see on Twitter when things implode. Sure. No matter the game, no matter the experience, when it's not working well, like when Cyberpunk came out, some people were having problems with the game.
Good point.
I played the game on an Xbox Series X, and I only crashed 3 times in 76 hours. Sure, there were bugs, no more than any other game that's released in the modern era, with the exception of Elden Ring, which is apparently perfect. But when I played it, I was like, I legitimately am not experiencing what these people are experiencing.
Yeah.
That is making them so mad that they're taking to Twitter. Articles are being written about it. YouTube videos are capitalizing on clickbait, titles that get the angry mob to comment or, whatever. And so when it comes to Star Citizen, a game that every person playing has to sign a EULA that is, and I'll be honest, I didn't read it. But I know that I'm sure somewhere in there, legally, they are telling you that this is an alpha product. It is not representative of either what they have marketed it to be or the final product. And that's what all of those things say.
Yep.
And so you know what you're signing up for. And I think people would like to know this experience that I had with 318. So we have a friend named Wally, and he has been right there along with us.
That poor guy.
This game back in the day. Yeah. A year ago when this whole thing started, and, to now, whatever. He's like me. He's always been there, keeping our, Star Citizen on our radar. But the first week that I played Star Citizen, him and I grouped every night without fail. I sent him a group invite. He was able to join. Poof, there he is in the universe. We are ready to take on the stars together. Yeah. Invictus happens, and they did a free weekend. The first night we had like 5 of us, 6 of us, all in the world together doing something on some ship that one of us rented. Literally the day after that, he couldn't group with us. So then you come along. Yep. You and I were able to group fine. Yep. All of our other friends group fine. Wally can't group. Not without having to back out to menu. Then, there's just these weird like voodoo magic ways of trying to group, and sometimes, rarely it would work. Yeah. So Wally and I, we've let it sit, and he really wants to play with us. It's fun. The game is amazing when you can play with other people. Yeah. So 318 launches, and I know all the disclaimers. The game, never play a game on patch day, never play a game on patch week, and in Star Citizen's case, never play a game in patch month. But,
so true.
But we tried, and that we knew what we were getting ourselves into, so we load in to the game, get to the menu. So far, so good, but that's always worked. So no surprise.
Yeah.
Wally looks over at our friend's menu, sends me an invite to join his party from the menu. Poof, there it is, in the corner where it should be. I accept it. Poof, there I am in the party. And we're like, what? This is all we wanted out of this. Who cares about PSE or PES, whatever,
Swing the party.
Whatever it is.
Yep.
Who cares?
Yep.
Who cares? Wally and I just want to group up.
Yep.
So he clicks, get into a server.
Yeah.
And fail. Because as everybody who has been around and knows what's going on with 318, actually getting into the server, whether best or your region, most of the time it was breaking.
Yeah.
At least the first weekend. And so eventually he clicks, through these 5 servers like 30 times. And eventually it takes us. And so for the next 20 seconds, we see the loading screen. We're like, this is fantastic. Then on my screen, oh, here I am. Area 18, right where I expect myself to be. I've got a lot of weird stuff in my inventory that I don't remember, but, whatever. I'm here, my character's here, and where's Wally? And it's just like a where's Waldo? I'm spinning around in the room looking for Wally, his little nameplate, nowhere to be found. And he's like, yeah, I'm still loading. I'm like, oh God, okay. So I get out of my room. Yeah. And in true Star Citizen fashion, I rubber band back to my bed like 4 times. Yeah. But I finally get out of my bed in my room after a monumental effort, and Area 18 is just as beautiful as it always has been. Oh yeah. Beauty may not be the right word for an industrial megapolis, but whatever. Yeah. It's the game looks great. There's other players milling about, and I'm like, okay, cool. I'm gonna go to the hangar. Meanwhile, Wally is still staring at a loading screen. I walk to the hangar, or walk to the tram, get on the tram, go to the hangar, and go to click on the vehicle retrieval console. Yeah. Nothing. Eventually, it locks me into it, and then eventually it pulls up my 2 ships. Yeah. Secretly, I was hoping there would be some random 3rd or 4th ship that I randomly had for no apparent reason, because why not?
Yep.
Obviously wasn't there. I go to summon my Cuddy, because between the choice of a Cuddy Black and a Titan, you're always going to choose the Cuddy.
Easy.
The better ship.
Yep.
It may look like crap compared to the Titan, but that thing is my baby. So I click it, and then it lags out and doesn't show me anything on the terminal, and I'm like, oh, whatever. And this is a little aside within this little story. But I want to, you've asked like what type of things in this game have, caught my eye, or like that immersion, right?
Yeah.
The fact that you can look at a screen inside of a game that you're viewing on a screen and it look as crystal clear as it is in the game. I don't know how to explain it, but that experience is just like mind blowing to me. Like that you can interact with a virtual screen through your screen and your mouse and keyboard, and it feel like you're it's right there. I don't know how to, I don't know how to explain it, but that experience was one of the initial wow, like this is interactive or whatever. This looks great. Yeah. So anyway, the ship, I click it. The screen doesn't load anything, and I'm like, well, whatever. I look around. I don't see, the marker for where my Cuddy is. And eventually it pops up as I'm meandering through the terminal. I'm like, okay, great. Hangar 3. Classic. Go to Hangar 3. There she is in all of her glory. Meanwhile, Wally still at a loading screen. Although he may have disconnected the game at that point.
Son of a...
I will go ahead and get to... there's a little part I want to say, but Wally never did make it into the game with me that night. So...
Was he getting like 19Ks or like was he getting an error message or?
I don't even know. He was just stuck in an infinite loading screen.
Yeah.
So while we were able to group, we weren't actually able to play. So it's still on trial with him. You know, to get eventually we want to be able to play together.
Yeah.
So I go to the hangar 3. Cuddy's there, beautiful. I open the back, drop down door.
Sure.
Walk into the ship. It smells like it used to, except it doesn't because video games. But again, and this is something not to fanboy, but there is a special immersion and a special feeling that you can physically, in game, walk into every flyable ship.
Yeah.
And it's to scale.
Yep.
And anybody who's ever been in an Origin 890 jump, whether through the mission or through piloting it or whatever, knows that is it's hard to explain if you've never experienced it, because never in any game that I've ever played has a vehicle had, essentially like an open world as a part of it, right?
Yeah.
And so I get into the ship, walking around, that same feeling is there where you're like, this is a space sim. Like, there's other games, as you said, I won't mention them, that do space sim, but their ships aren't, traversable. Yeah. And I go, the moment, now I have no idea how to fly the ship anymore. I've completely forgotten. I wouldn't, but that didn't matter because I went to get in my cockpit, and next thing I know, I was dead. And I have no idea why, but I went to sit down in the seat, and then all of a sudden there was my, hey, you're bleeding out screen. And I was like, great. I tried this 3 separate times that night with the Cuddy. I could never get the Titan to actually spawn. Yeah. But the Cuddy, it was there. I wasn't taking it anywhere, that's for sure. And so, all in all, that is one man's experience with 318, and it's not a positive look on, or rather, it's not a positive experience. And it doesn't look good on the game when that's the type of experience that people are having. Yeah. With that said, again, I understand, and I'm mature enough to recognize that, what I spent in the game, I knew full well that was an experience that I may get. I may also get the experience where we are on that satellite trying to get Aaron to get rid of his crime stat, and there's people flying in trying to blow us up. Yep. That was a great experience.
100%.
But the 318 experience that I had was not so great, and many other people had that same experience. And again, that is the reality of this type of game, where it's at in development. Yeah. And when you compare that with the innovations that they're trying to produce into this game, like, it makes sense. Yeah. And I can't fault them. I don't think the game is a scam, because again, you can have both experiences, or really all the experiences we've talked about, good and bad so far, for $40. Absolutely. And I'll be honest, I'm at a point in my life where I spend that $40, I don't miss that $40. Yeah. It's gone. It's an experience. You spend $40 to go see a movie that sucks for 2 hours, for 2 people these days.
So true.
People, whatever.
So true.
So that's my longer rant about my 318 experience, but ultimately, love it. I think the takeaway is that, it's a work in progress. Mm-hmm. The persistent entity thing is this whole, I can't also think of a game that has done it like that. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so in subsequent podcasts, we're going to get into all of that in more depth. We're going to be looking at the development status updates. We're going to be looking at the strive cycles to get us there. We're going to talk about the hard conversations. We're going to talk about what we love about the game. And I think this is a really good time to kind of, I guess, wrap up this inaugural episode. But for 318, it's been painful. However, what's the alternative? Are we okay with Star Citizen just kind of reverting to a cookie cutter MMO? Are we okay with it reverting to an EVE Online, World of Warcraft? And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but are we okay with it just being status quo and something we've experienced just in game or just in space, right? Or are we patient enough to allow them to use our money, which, by the way, I'm going to nerd out real quick. It's like $558 million pledged over like 4 million gamers. So it's like $140 per gamer, right? Are we okay with them taking that money and trying to give us something we've never seen before? I think it's a dichotomy that we as gamers need to kind of reason with. What are we okay with? Are we okay with the status quo? Are we okay with something groundbreaking? And so with that comes this huge conversation that we will envelop or we will digest in the next several weeks and beyond the verse. The whole point of this podcast is to take these strive cycles, these efforts, and really dive into what is the product, what is the end state and the vision. And I plan to do so with the assets, the amazing people like we have with Coniff. Hopefully I'm able to get, like with Robert Chesney and the senior narrative design team at Amazon Game Studios, I'm hoping to get a Galactica, a Jake in here as well. But can we have conversations where we bring these dialogues to the community and just have a very open and transparent conversation about where we're at and where we're trying to go? I think if you look at the roadmap, with Pyro coming down, which is 4.0, with Pyro coming down the pipeline, with server meshing as the final pillar that we're trying to accomplish from a technical standpoint, are we close? And that's the $1 million question. Are we close to the minimum viable product where Star Citizen can say, all right, Squadron 42, you're live. Star Citizen, you are live. Because for the past 10 years, we haven't landed the plane yet. So here we are. Coniff, I want to say thank you so much for joining me on this inaugural episode. I look forward to the subsequent episodes where we do get into all this color. I would hope to have you back. I would love to have you back, my friend. But if you would, if people wanted to follow you, if people wanted to dive into who you are and the content that you're producing, how can people find you?
So ultimately, if you want to find what I'm doing right now, you go to YouTube, go type in Coniff, Coniff, and there I am. I recently put out a video on why I left ESO for Guild Wars 2 that blew up way beyond anything I could expect.
It's a good one.
And ironically, now I'm playing all sorts of games. And I recently put out another video why I love open world games. Star Citizen makes a very brief cameo in it because, again, it is an open world game. I love it. I love that experience. But so Coniff on YouTube and then Twitter at WISFORWIZ, which was a shortened version of Wisdom for Wizards. So
love it.
Again, I thank you for having me, one.
Absolutely.
But two, I think that it's important for everyone to look at this experience that you had, getting into this game as, you became a citizen that day that you were on Orison looking at all those ships, and you became a fan of this idea that, CIG wants to push innovation into the open world multiplayer experience. The status quo is fine for WoW. The status quo is fine for MMOs that, have come and gone. Yeah. But what CIG is wanting to do, and I have to give them credit for that, and be thankful for that ultimately, because it's going to push other companies to do the same, is innovate to go beyond what has been done. Go beyond the verse, if you will.
Oh, I love it. $1 million right there. Nailed it.
But yes, thank you for having me. And, I don't have much more to say on Star Citizen because, like many people, I'm patiently waiting, and I'll dip my toes from here and there. And there might be seasons where I really dive in, and there might be seasons where I don't.
Yeah.
But I am patiently waiting. I think my money was well spent. And even if, on the very minute chance that nothing ever happens with this game beyond what is current, I will not regret the money spent. I will have enjoyed the experiences and the experiences to come. And, ultimately, that's why I play video games. So,
100%.
Thank you.
Well, Coniff, as a dear friend, thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. Hope to have you back. For those of you on YouTube interested in how we can listen or how we can get involved in Beyond the Verse or our internal organization with Soul Provision, here we go. So Beyond the Verse is /Star Citizen Bravo Tango Vector, right? So BTV. That's on Instagram. That's on Twitter. At that, we'll get you to YouTube. For all things that are Soul Provision, that's our organization that Coniff is a part of, and many others. You can go to the robertspaceindustriescom/orgs/provision. All of this is in the details in the YouTube video and in your podcast. So feel free to click, join. You are more than welcome to join this effort. I look forward to being part of this community, being part of your traverse through the verse. And with that, I wish y'all the best. I hope this finds you well. And please come back next Thursday, 8 p.m. Central. I look forward to having a conversation with you again. This has been Beyond the Verse, Star Citizen podcast with your host, Sulyce, and guest speaker, my dear friend, Coniff. Thank you so much.